Hey, what's up? My name is Johannes, and in today's video I want to share some very practical tips with you that I found in this book. And those are tips about how you can control your desire for more stuff. When I was new to minimalism, I quickly understood the benefits and I saw how applying minimalism to my life could be very helpful for me. And I also didn't have much trouble with decluttering most of my stuff. But I found it very difficult to stop bringing in new things. I still had a very strong desire for more stuff, and I still had this underlying belief that I will be happy once I have this one more thing. And even though I now hardly buy anything, this belief is still there to some level. But recently I stumbled upon some really helpful advice, and this is where this book comes in, The Teaching of Buddha. And in this book there's a chapter that explains 5 techniques that Buddha taught to overcome desire. According to Buddha, desire causes suffering, because when we desire something, that means we attach our happiness to it. In a way we are saying, I will be happy once I have this thing. So as long as we don't have it, we feel like we are lacking something. And that's what causes suffering. And that's why we should use these 5 techniques to overcome our desire. And I was really surprised how practical and relevant these tips are, even for me as a modern, non-religious person living thousands of years after Buddha. So I want to share them with you. I'm just going to read these tips to you and add some of my own commentary and tell you how I interpret them. That by no means means that this is the correct way to interpret them, because I'm not a Buddhist scholar, so there's a good chance that there are different interpretations. But I'm just going to read it to you, and then you can see for yourself if you find it helpful or not. First, people should have right ideas of things. Ideas that are based on careful observation and understand causes and effects and their significance correctly. Since the cause of suffering is rooted in the mind's desires and attachments, and since desire and attachment are related to mistaken observations by an ego self, neglecting the significance of the law of cause and effect, and since it is from these wrong observations, there can be peace only if the mind can be rid of these worldly passions. So what Buddha is saying here is that we should observe ourselves, we should observe our minds to see how our desires cause suffering and also how our desires are created by our ego. You've probably been in a situation once where you thought, oh, once I have this jacket or this new phone or whatever, then I will be so happy. And then you get this jacket or whatever else it is, and you feel good for a while, and then in the end it doesn't really make a difference to you and you don't feel any happier because of it. And the entire time before you got it, there was a lot of suffering because you thought, I need this to be happy. And so by being aware of these situations and really observing how our desires create the suffering, and also how fulfilling these desires actually don't do anything to end the suffering, that can really help us to understand our desires and to help us see that they aren't really helpful and that they are something that we should avoid. And when we truly understand this, when we are aware of how our ego creates these desires and how these desires cause nothing but suffering, that really makes it possible for us to let go of the desires. Second, people can get rid of these mistaken observations and resulting worldly passions by careful and patient mind control. With efficient mind control, they can avoid desires arising from the stimulating of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and the subsequent mental processes, and by doing so, cut off the very root of all worldly passions. So what he's saying here is that to overcome our desires, we have to recognize them before they are so strong that they control us. Often our desires are caused by sense perceptions that we have. For example, we smell some delicious food and then we crave eating this food. Or maybe we see someone that we admire wearing a certain outfit and then we think, oh, I want that outfit too. And when we train our mind, which means meditating and practicing mindfulness, then we can notice the moment these desires arise and stop them before they get too strong. We can become aware of how our ego creates these desires and then just let them go and return back to the present moment. Meditation and mindfulness are both very important parts of Buddhism, and today there's actually a lot of scientific evidence that these practices actually do work and are very useful even for non-religious people. So if you don't already meditate, that's definitely something that you should into. There are a lot of free resources out there that make it very easy to start meditating and start practicing mindfulness, like meditation apps, for example, the Waking Up app, but also books, online videos and articles. So that's definitely something that you should look into. Third, people should have correct ideas with regard to the proper use of all things. That is, with regard to articles of food and clothing, they should not think of them in relation to comfort and pleasure, but only in their relation to the body's needs. Clothing is necessary to protect the body against extremes of heat and cold. Food is necessary for the nourishment of the body. Worldly passions cannot arise through such a right way of thinking. Now, this is really similar to something that I talked about in my previous video, where I talked a little bit about Epicurean philosophy and how this relates to minimalism. Like Epicurus, Buddha says that we shouldn't pursue things that aren't necessary for us. In my last video, I talked about the example of a warm jacket. When you are cold and you're freezing, then putting on a warm jacket will really improve your well-being a lot. But once you are warm and comfortable, putting on a more expensive warm jacket really won't do that much to improve your well-being. And when you understand this, when you understand what is the real purpose of the things that you consume, that makes it a lot easier not to be seduced by them. When you understand that the purpose of food is not pleasure, but the nourishment and health of your body, and when you understand that the purpose of clothing is not to look cool or to signal your social status, but simply to protect your body from the weather, then this makes it a lot easier for you not to desire things that are more than you need. Fourth, people should learn endurance. They should learn to endure the discomforts of heat and cold, hunger and thirst. They should learn to be patient when receiving abuse and scorn. For it is in the practice of endurance that quenches the fire of worldly passions which is burning up their bodies. Now, I think that this part can very easily be misunderstood, and it sounds kind of like Buddha wants us to be ascetics and to hurt ourselves and to punish ourselves. But I don't think that that's what he's talking about here, because Buddha lived an ascetic life for a while, but later in his life, when he actually reached enlightenment, he became Buddha, he started teaching that we shouldn't be ascetics, that we should instead pursue a middle way. We should have neither a life of excess and desire and pleasures, but we also shouldn't live an ascetic life and deprive ourselves of things. But we should practice discomfort because it makes us stronger and it makes us realize how little we actually need. So this is, I believe, actually a very Stoic thought, and there are a lot of practical ways in which you can practice it. One way is fasting. Last year I did a 3-day fast where I didn't eat anything for 3 days, and something like this really makes you realize how important food is just for the nourishment of the body, and it makes you really appreciate food and also realize how unimportant a lot of the other things that we have are. Something else that I often do is taking cold showers or taking cold plunges, because this also is something that's very uncomfortable, but it shows us that we can endure discomfort and that we can overcome discomfort, and that in the end discomfort is not as bad as we think it is. I also slept on the floor for a while, which is also, I think, a good way to practice this. So when you're doing things like this, like taking cold showers or fasting, it really teaches you a lot about yourself. It teaches you a lot about what's important to you. And it shows you how irrelevant a lot of these things are that we think are so important. Fifth, people should learn to see and so avoid all danger. Just as a wise man keeps away from wild horses or mad dogs, so one should not make friends with evil men, nor should he go to places that wise men avoid. If one practices caution and prudence, the fire of worldly passions which is burning in their vitals will die down. So this last point that Buddha is making here, I think, is so important, because it points out how much we are influenced by our surroundings. For once, this means the people that you surround yourself with. There's the saying that you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So if you spend a lot of time with very superficial and materialistic people, then this is probably going to rub off, even if you have different values and if you don't necessarily agree with them. Just by spending a lot of time with them, you can't really escape it. So if you spend a lot of time with people that have very toxic or unhelpful values, then maybe you should reconsider it and spend more time with people who actually encourage you and motivate you to be someone that you want to be. But this also extends to the places that you visit and the content you consume online. So if you want to buy less stuff, for example, but you go to malls all the time, then it will be very difficult, because malls are an environment that is designed to get you to want to buy things and to create this desire for stuff in you. Also, if you consume a lot of media that is very materialistic, or you follow people on social media that share these kind of values, then it will also be very difficult for you to resist these siren calls. If you do end up in a situation like this, the previous 4 tips can help you to avoid or overcome your desires in this moment, but in general it's probably best to avoid being tempted in the first place, because it's the easiest way to overcome it. So these were Buddha's 5 tips to overcome desire, and I think they are so practical and so relevant today, and you can really use them for a lot of different purposes. Whether you want to be more minimalist and start buying less stuff, or you just want to avoid eating unhealthy food, or you want to overcome your desire to spend a lot of time on social media and on your phone, in all of these cases, these tips can really help you to overcome this desire and become more aware of your actual values. I hope you found these tips as interesting and as helpful as I did, so let me know in the comments down below what you think about them. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, because it helps this channel a lot, and I will see you, if you want, in my next video.